the Women's Resource Center of Winona, Winona Occupational Rehabilitation Services, Winona State University, social work students, and Winona State University American Democracy Project. We are pleased to welcome those of you in our live audience and citizens who may be watching at home. We also want to thank the City of Winona for allowing us to hold this educational forum in the City Council chambers. For those of you watching at home, we have a call-in phone number where you can provide us with questions for the panel. The call-in phone number is 507-450-3859. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan volunteer organization organized at the local, state, and national levels to encourage citizens to become educated and participate in government. While we as a league do study and take stands on issues, we do not endorse or support political parties, candidates, or tell voters how to answer referendum questions. We do read statements from candidates that are unable to attend our forums. However, this evening we are welcoming all 8 of our candidates. This forum is intended to provide the voters with information so they can make an educated choice on the ballot. The views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates. We do encourage our members as individuals, as we encourage each of you, to get involved in your community. For the 2018 forums, the League of Women Voters in Winona has adopted the participation policy as approved by the League of Women Voters Minnesota 2018 board. This policy for all forums allows inviting all candidates for elected office, and if only one candidate chooses to participate, the forum will still be held. The participation policy and ground rules were provided to the candidates with their invitations to attend. Copies of both policies are available this evening for the public. I'm briefly going to review some of the highlights on the ground rules for this forum. The audience is expected to be courteous to the candidates and good listeners. This is a live cable TV broadcast, so the audience is asked not to express support or concern during the forum and to hold their applause until the end of the forum. We remind everyone once again to please turn off your cell phones, pagers, and any other electronic devices you may have. This forum is being taped, may not be edited, and must be broadcast in its entirety in accordance with all FCC regulations. During the forum, we ask the audience present and our TV listeners to write down their questions or call them in at 507-450-3859. Our timekeepers for this evening are Mary Morgan and Wendy Graves. The League of Women Voters and co-sponsors will sort questions for the moderator. The moderator will ask the questions. The League of Women Voters will determine the questions to be asked, and attempts in good faith will be made to cover all areas of interest expressed by the audience. Speakers do not know the questions in advance. Questions that are hostile, partisan, embarrassing, inappropriate, or of a personal nature will not be asked. Questions on similar topics may be grouped, consolidated, and/or rewritten at the discretion of the question facilitators and moderator. All questions are property of the League of Women Voters. For those citizens watching at home, again remind you to call in 507-450-3859. Candidates will strictly observe the time limits on their responses. The timekeeper will hold up cards to indicate that time is about to expire, and once the stop card is displayed, candidates will stop at the end of their current sentence. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to provide an opening statement, 1 minute to respond to each question, and 1 minute to provide a closing statement. The order of opening statements, responses to questions, and closing remarks has been determined through the use of a League of Women Voters table that's numerically balanced to provide equal opportunities to candidates to respond first and last. Candidates will be called on when it's their turn to respond. Candidates with us today running for the Winona Area Public School Board at-large seat are Ben Barato, Nancy Denzer, Jim Schul, and Carl Sonneman. For the District 1 seat, Ted Hazelton and Steve Schill. District 2 seat, Michael Hanrader and Gerald Portman. We will begin now with our opening statements, and our first speaker will be candidate Barato.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting on this forum. I'm Ben Barato, and I'm running for Director at Large. Over the past 8 years, we have accomplished much, but much remains to be done. We have put in some programs which are proving to be very popular. A few are Spanish Immersion Program, and most recently, the REACH program, which pairs some of our high school students with local businesses. We have consolidated our elementary schools, and now each has a principal, guidance counselor, and social worker. The art, music, phy-ed teachers, and others can now spend more time teaching rather than traveling between buildings. We have talked about bringing our elementary schools up to 21st century standards. This must be addressed in the next few years. Buildings are important, but what we do in these buildings, the programming, is the heart and soul of what we do. As I said, there are many good things going on in this district, but that doesn't mean change is not needed. We have to change the negative narrative of the last few years of cutting to something more positive. Let's talk about reinstating speech at the high school, or let's talk about how we can offer the community service class for the whole year. We are not offering some classes for lack of staff due to cutting staff, and this has resulted in very large class sizes at the middle school and at the high school. This has to be addressed in next year's budget. There are jobs that cannot be filled for lack of qualified workers. So let's collaborate more with Southeast Tech, or put back some industrial tech classes in our schools. The MCA scores are not where we would like them to be. Same methods will not equal different results, so we must try a different approach. I have a daughter and 3 granddaughters, all attended and received a good education in Winona Area Public Schools. My youngest is presently at the middle school. I have 31 years of teaching experience, 29 of those at
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, to those present tonight, those watching, and to my fellow candidates. My name is Nancy Denzer, and I'm running for one of the at-large seats for the WAPS School Board. Since the primary election, I've had the opportunity to listen to concerns, questions, and thoughts about the future of our school district, and I have done a building walkthrough at each learning site in the district. I'm running for the school board to offer the community 34 years of educational experience and firsthand knowledge of creating academically challenging programs, staff development, and addressing safety and security issues, meeting maintenance needs, and 19 years of experience with school finance. I believe the focus in the district right now should be continuing to provide all students strong academic engagement experiences in safe and welcoming environments. Here are 3 ways to accomplish this. First, ensure that each building has security and safety measures and training in place for students and staff. The appropriate resources and responses are guaranteed for students to report and address concerns of any fears, anxiety, bullying, and other issues that interfere with learning. Second, maintain intentional staff development opportunities that focus on academic tools necessary to teach at high levels. Lastly, develop strong community outreach through partnerships with post-secondary institutions, businesses, and other experts within the greater community. I believe we need to move beyond the past, commit to the future, learn from our experience, and always keep our focus on what's best for all of our students. The communities that make up WAPS deserve and should have schools that they can say, that's my school and I'm Winhock proud. Thank you.
Candidate Schul.
Hi, my name is Jim Schul, and I'd like to thank the League of Women's Voters and also like to thank my wife for her unwavering support. Thank you, Krista. So I'm running for school board because I want to help out my neighbors and because I'm committed to public education. My entire life has been dedicated to public education. I'm a teacher, educator, and educational researcher at Winona State University. I've authored over 24 published articles and have a book forthcoming about public education. Prior to my time in academia, I was a high school social studies teacher in Ohio for 10 years. I'm a pedagogue. I believe that school decision making should emphasize teaching and learning of students. I think I can help WAPS in this area. I'd like to see WAPS more prudent and transparent with its financial decisions. I fear that the board is not adequately informed to make decisions that are best for kids. That's got to change. I'd like WAPS to be continually vigilant on school security and on bulking up its social services, namely counseling services. I suspect that some of my opponents believe these things as well based upon their prior statements. But what sets me apart is that I want to professionalize our teachers and be more committed to inclusion of exceptional learners. My entire platform is based upon this book by Linda Darling Hammond entitled Empowered Educators. There needs to be a balance between centralization and decentralization in our decision-making. This is a change that is realistic, it will improve morale amongst our teachers, and most of all, it will provide a more equitable and responsive school system to our community. Inclusion of exceptional learners in the general education classroom is a passion of mine. Pulling in and pulling out is not inclusion. Certain discrimination practices is not inclusion, it is exclusion. IEP teams need to be real teams, not an empty facade for administrators to make more centralized decisions. We need to do our best for all of our kids to assure social equity. Justice delayed is justice denied. You can find out more about me from my website, jimshul.com, or my Facebook page at Shul for School. Thank you very much.
Candidate Sonneman.
Thank you. Thank you to the League. Thank you for those of you who've taken the time to attend tonight. I'm Carl Sonneman. I'm a candidate for at-large on the Winona School Board. I'm also I do not make my living in education. I'm an attorney and I have a small business which is essentially my law firm, my law office. And I think the board needs a voice, needs perspective that is apart from educators on the school board. It needs business people, it needs community members, it needs workers who make their living in the community of Winona. And many of the failures of the board in the last few years come about because it is too focused, it is too narrow, it does not reflect these interests, and it does not reflect the Winona community. The Winona district needs great changes. It has lost the trust of the community. I have heard over and over the frustration that Winona citizens have with the district, and I will give voice to those feelings. We must focus on better management of monies available to the district, rather than constantly talking about cutting programs or closing schools. Much of the district's financial problems are self-inflicted due to poor budgeting and poor use of financial management tools. The district has over $40 million in monies, revenues to work with. Good financial management should be able to allocate such a large sum across the needs and functions of the district. The primary function of the school board is to set policies for the district and to manage the district's financial performance. The board should make this its central focus. It should begin its meetings by discussing these problems and not end its meetings after board members are tired with that. I'd ask for your support. Thank you.
Candidate Hazelton.
Good evening, folks. My name is Ted Hazelton, and I am running for school board in District 1. I am a former school board member. I served a term in 2007 through 2010. People ask me, well, why am I running again? The answer is simple. When I left the school board in 2010, we had a budget surplus and had won the state finance award 5 years running. Now, in the last 8 years, we've been operating at a deficit in 6 of the 8 past years, and there is virtually no budget reserve. Our credit rating has dropped 2 points on the S&P financial ratings. We keep cutting programs and services that affect our students rather than cutting in administration and other areas. Our community doesn't trust the decisions that are being made by the current board. That affects such things as employee morale and future passage of referendums. It is time for new leadership. I want to restore accountability, credibility, transparency, and public trust back to our school board. I am dissatisfied with the direction that the current board is headed. After a number of blunders that have happened in the last several years, it's time for change. The way the elementary school consolidation was handled in such a rush, and now the subsequent sales of the buildings are appalling. This has led to drastic numbers in enrollment. We lost 130 students because of this because of this consolidation, which translates to budget money. This has also created a rift and great division in our community. This is done without any long-term facility plan in place and without regard to what the majority of the community wants. I would like to change that. Thank you.
Candidate Shield.
My name is Steve Schild, and I'm running for re-election as First District Director for Winona Area Public Schools. I'd like to say thanks to the League and all the other supporters. I'm running because I want to be part of continuing the difficult but necessary work the board is doing to make education better for students and for taxpayers alike. Good things are happening every day in Winona Area Public Schools, despite the very real, very painful difficulties that we share, sadly, with school districts across the state and across the nation. Those troubles are best addressed if we acknowledge and act on them, and that's what the current board is doing. And we've made significant progress on key issues such as, first, consolidating buildings. Painful as it's been, closing schools lets us put more resources, human and financial, into education instead of bricks and mortar. As an example, and this may have been mentioned already, but when school started this fall, every student in an elementary school was in a building that had a full-time social worker, and they had access to more academic and counseling services. Secondly, we've got a student-focused strategic plan that's being implemented, and it's based on input from parents, staff, every segment of the community, and it holds great promise for everyone in the district. A third priority, another one that also involves community input, is continuing the process of developing a long-term facilities plan that'll serve both student and taxpayer well. The best way to bring students back into the district is to offer the best education possible, and that's what the initiatives I've just spoken about are aiming for. Those initiatives deserve, demand, and need our support, and I want to keep working to help see them through because their success will be a success for the whole community, student, taxpayer, staff, parents, everybody. I ask for your support. Thanks.
Candidate Hanratty.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good evening, everyone. I am Michael Hanratty, and I am running for the school board in the 2nd District. I thank the League of Women Voters and the other sponsors for the opportunity to be here tonight. My wife, Jamie, is a teacher in the district, and together we are raising our 3 young children. They are my motivation for running, but I also think that I am uniquely qualified to help bring creative solutions to the board table. I work at Catholic Charities of Southern Minnesota in the guardianship program there. I help make decisions for individuals who are incapable of doing so for themselves. In that role, we have to be creative problem solvers. I believe that rings true on the school board as well. I think the district is at a tipping point. I'm not convinced that the leadership is moving us in the right direction. I believe in transparency throughout the district and working on rebuilding trust within the community. Student success is a priority, making sure that each student has the opportunity to be successful, whether that be a college career or in the workforce. We need to equally prepare and educate our students, giving those who want the opportunity to be in the community to find their passion, the ability to do so. We must focus on early education. Birth to kindergarten programming gives families a chance for that early intervention that is critical for kindergarten readiness and a successful future. School safety is of great concern. We need to make sure that we are following best practices in that area, ensuring that our children are safe. We have a great staff who are dedicated to educating our children, and wonderful things are happening in our schools. We need to focus on that positivity to move the district forward. Once again, I'm Michael Hanratty, and I'm running for school board in the 2nd District. Thanks.
Candidate Portman.
I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting tonight's candidate forum and for providing us candidates an opportunity to share with the voters our views, values, and ideas concerning the Winona Area Public Schools. I am Gerald Portman. I am a retired, professionally trained educator. I've been a teacher my entire professional career. I've worked and taught in public schools and in higher education. I began as a classroom teacher. Later, as an administrator and educational leader, I taught teachers how to implement classroom management and to improve their teaching skills. In my career in higher education, I taught and helped prepare graduate students for the principalship and for the superintendency. One of my university responsibilities was to develop and to deliver professional development programs for practicing school administrators across the state of Iowa. The top priority in Winona Area Public Schools District 861 must be educating the children in a safe and healthy environment. The top issue I want to address is to improve student achievement. Classroom teachers must be treated as professionals and empowered to do the jobs for which they have trained. I want District 861 to earn the trust and the confidence of the community it serves. The board must be transparent in conducting its business and providing the community with the information, facts, and details necessary to make informed decisions. School board members are public servants. We must be willing to listen and to accept input from many sources. Schools do not improve by maintaining the status quo. The public's business must be conducted in public. Honesty and candor must be our guiding principle. Board decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, for your opening statements. We're now ready to start with our audience questions. And our first question is, what is the role and duty of a school board member, as well as your vision for that position? And for this, we will
Just got
start
cut off.
with candidate Portman.
That's the part I just got cut off.
Well, good, good job.
All right. Would you please rephrase the question or repeat it?
What is the role and duty of a school board member, as well as your vision for that position?
School board members are not elected to run the schools. The responsibility is to set the policy by which the schools are run. The effectiveness of a board is measured by whether or not schools improve and children benefit. The operation of the schools should be handled by professionally trained administrators. The board hires a superintendent to whom they delegate the authority to conduct the daily operation. The superintendent is accountable to the board just as the board is accountable to its constituents.
Candidate Barado.
The role of a school board member, we are governance. We set policy, we supervise the superintendent, but we don't get into management. We leave that up to the superintendent and his principals and directors. And I think that's probably the role.
Candidate Hanratty.
The role and duty of the school board is, as my fellow candidates have pointed out, the first is setting policy. I see the policy of our schools should be a social justice issue, so I'd like to see more policy directing that. The next is overseeing the budget. We've had a lot of challenges. It's not short-term, but there have been some decisions by the board that have made budgets more difficult. And the third is overseeing the superintendent. And from what I have seen, it almost seems like the opposite is happening, where the superintendent is overseeing the board. So I would like to see that change. Thank you.
Candidate Schul.
A school board's supposed to assure student success. A school board member is also an educational leader, a public intellectual in the community, a public servant. And so it's necessary, in order to make policy, it's necessary for that school board member to build relationships within the school district, with students, with teachers, with administrators, with parents, with all community members. We have the public schools where democracy is at its closest. I plan to be visible in the district. I plan to be diligent in researching educational policy. And most of all, I plan to listen to all of those stakeholders in our public school system.
Candidate Shield.
Yeah, the question has been very nicely answered. I think the basic answer is yes, that the board is there to set broad policy and then to delegate the day-to-day management of those policies to administrative staff. And I think that the other thing that a board should do, and this too has been mentioned, is to listen to what's said in the community. The complicated part about that is you don't get one voice, you don't get one answer from the community. And so the difficulty that comes is trying to decide what that you hear about is the best course of action, what's going to have the best ramification for what has been correctly listed as the primary obligation of the board, and that's ensuring student success. And the fact that different people see the world differently is what makes the role complicated. But the short answer is the board should set broad policy and delegate and hand off the day-to-day administration to administrators. Thanks.
Candidate Denzer.
I know this has already been stated, but I will reiterate it by saying, I know that setting policy is the primary important duties of a school board. I also believe that hiring superintendents, or that the superintendent can then hire staff to be able to carry out the duties afforded to that superintendent in that role. I think one of the things that we ought to be able to do is to listen to the community, but in my mind, the community includes not only the school members, but also the students of the schools, so that we get a broad perspective about what they're doing. And basically to take all the barriers out of the way so we can teach children and make the best possible environment for everyone to be successful.
Candidate Hazelton.
I too will attest to what everybody else has said at the table. The role of the school board is to provide policy and give direction to the superintendent, who then in turn gives that direction to support staff, administrators, et cetera. The board is the one who hires the superintendent, who oversees the superintendent, and the superintendent is to answer to the board. The board is the liaison between the public and the goings-on in the school district. A good board member listens to the constituents' concerns. They oversee budget and provide transparency and make the district run.
Candidate Sonman.
Thank you. I disagree with what I've heard. In broad terms, yes, the board is to look at finance, it's to look at accountability, it's to look at policies, it's to monitor student performance. But above all else, the number one function of the school board is to manage the finances of the district. This board has forfeited that job. I don't know that they even conduct themselves doing it. To do financial management, you have to know where you stand each month. You have to look at your budget, you have to look at your actual performance through that, and you have to be able to say, we're not where we should be, or if we're on target, how are we, we want to maintain that for going forward another month. If there's changes need to be made, it needs to start with the board. And it may have to be in month 1 or month 6 or month 9 of any given year. But they have to know, and they do not have the tools today to know how to manage the budget or finances.
Moving on to our next question. It's easy to say what you'll support, but sometimes financial constraints require choosing between several worthwhile priorities. How would you approach those difficult decisions? And our first speaker will be candidate Sonneman.
Can you repeat that question again?
It's easy to say what you'll support, but sometimes financial constraints require choosing between several worthwhile priorities. How would you approach those difficult decisions?
The primary the primary function of the board in approaching those decisions is to understand the finances of the district. And it's, as I say, it's clear to me that the board does not understand those financial matters. Whenever you have a choice between two goods, that's often hard to pick. Finance is one factor, your goals, your gain is another. We need to get where we have the right information before we start talking about choosing between goods and bads. I think the district has been set up frankly, by a superintendent, by consultants they hire, constantly being given false choices, false alternatives. Many of the things that we could be doing, but with simply a better understanding of how to do them financially. And we aren't getting the right tools at this point.
Candidate Hazelton.
I would concur with a couple of statements that Carl said. However, if I were on the board, I would evaluate each program or service, find out the numbers, how many students or how many parents or taxpayers that it affects, what's the financial obligation of each, and then do a little more research, talk to people that are directly affected, such as our students, our teachers, and then do a lot of heavy weighing between them. And I would support the option that where more benefit is received by the general public or our students, rather than the option where there is less support or less people affected. So in short, you want to really examine and do what's best.
Candidate Shield.
That was me or Mr. Yeah.
Shield.
Yep, you want to look at the options and you want to do what's best. The best way I would answer that question is I would respond in making tough decisions exactly the way that I have. I take it, it's really too bad that, I'm not aware of any false statements that have been made, and I really think it too bad that a good man, Rich Dahman, has been accused of what he was accused of by Mr. Sonneman. What this board did was look, finally, at enrollment figures and financial figures and saw the dovetail downward, and we reacted in a way that said we have very few alternatives. And to continue funding buildings that cannot be justified on the basis of enrollment are guaranteed to harm the quality of education that our children will get. So the question is a very good one. What do you do when you've got tough choices? You look at the information, you know that you're going to be criticized regardless of what you do, and you have the courage of your convictions and you stand by them. And I believe that we have done the right thing. Failing to close schools would have only gotten us in deeper.
Candidate Hanratty.
Thanks. I think that we don't just look at all the information, but we have to make sure that we have all of the information to start with. We need to have creative approaches. We need to determine what's best for our students, our teachers, and our overall community and taxpayers. And then finally, we have to follow the research and follow best practices that are out there by people like Jim, who does education for a living, and go with the best practices and evidence-based solutions. Thanks.
Candidate Schul.
I go by the philosophy of pragmatism. That's the American philosophy that's gotten us where we are. In a good way, whatever it's good, pragmatism has helped. So basically, you make decisions that affects the students the least. So you go furthest away from the students. Goodview Elementary doesn't have a custodian on staff. So if a kid pukes, you got to wait until someone comes over somewhere else in the district. That's not a good decision. So let me share with you some statistics I got from the university, from the state of Minnesota. So Winona School District has 2 times the number of administrators than school counselors. It has 5 times the number of administrators and administrative support than counselors. I think that's a pretty good place to start the cutting. Administration. Thank you.
Candidate Barata.
Well, when money is short and you have to choose between some priority, what are your priorities? I think some people have said, and I concur, that we have to gather all the information so that we can make an informed choice. And for me, if you have to choose between administration or other areas and students, I'm always going to come down on the side of the students. I think that's what education is all about. We have to educate the students, and that's where our priorities lie, and that's where our money should be spent.
Candidate Portman.
Would you please repeat the question?
It's easy to say what you'll support, but sometimes financial constraints require choosing between several worthwhile priorities. How would you approach those difficult decisions?
Okay, first, I believe in informed decision-making. So the first step is to gather as much information as possible to make an informed decision. You need to ask certain questions, such as how will this decision affect people? How is it going to impact the educational program we offer to children? How will it benefit and improve the program? One of the questions that seems to have slid past in the past is not only what are the intended consequences, but look beyond, what are the unintended consequences of the decision? Because often that will help guide the proper decision.
Candidate Denzer.
I also believe in informed decision-making when doing any kind of financial, constructions of what we're going to do with our students or programming that we do in our buildings. I think we need to also be looking outside of our comfort zone and outside of the box a little bit so that we can get creative in our solutions and do things that we might not always think about. And a lot of times I think we ask our students the kinds of things that we're looking to for them. They need to have support in the classroom, things that they can look forward to, and asking them their opinion, I think, is really important. But data, asking questions, and making sure that what we do is intentional and informed is our best practice.
Our third question is a three-part question, so I want to make some notes. What is the function of public schools? What do you see as the biggest strength of Winona Public Schools, and what would you push to change? And our first respondent to the three-part question will be candidate Denzer.
Okay, can you repeat it?
Yes, I can. What is the function of public schools, and what do you see as the biggest strength of Winona Public Schools? What would you push to change?
Well, the biggest function for me is that we educate all students so that they can become their best selves in whatever they want to do and pursue in life, and that we need to be able to provide for them the adequate support by staff and support services to do that. The strength of Winona for me, my children went to school here, I went to school here, is that it's a community of people who really care about this town and who want what's best for our students. And I think that's evident every day in our classrooms. And I think we need to just continue to pursue what's best for them to be successful.
Candidate Portman.
This question's going to take a whole lot longer than 1 minute, but I'll give it a shot. The function of the public schools is to educate the children, to serve the needs of the community. The biggest strength of the Winona schools is the community itself. This school district is composed of folks who strongly believe in education. They want what's best for their children. So what would I change? The thing I would focus most on change is disseminating more information. Let the public understand what the questions are and let them know what all of the details are involved so that when decisions are made, people understand and they don't begin to question and doubt.
Candidate Morano.
Well, as far as function goes, the first part of that question, I would say that our duty is to educate all students and bring them to whatever level their ability will let them reach. The strengths of the Winona Public Schools, I think, has always been the teachers. I've been in situations over the years where we were in difficult times and the teachers always carried the day. What would I change? I guess I'm not happy with our financial situation. I think we have to do things differently, and where we're at financially is not acceptable.
Candidate Hanratty.
Our function of the public schools is to have our students hit the ground running when they graduate to be able to solve the problems of the 21st century. Our greatest strength, Ben stole my answer, is our teachers. Unfortunately, they don't always feel valued, but they are the greatest strength of our school district. And what I would push to change is to enhance some community programs like Project Reach Right now, the Chamber of Commerce has a big hand in that, and I would like the school board, or the school district to be able to add to that. And I would also want to make sure that our early education programming is reaching all families. Early education is one of my biggest priorities, and I want to make sure that every single family that needs those early interventions are receiving those programming from the district.
Candidate Shield.
The reason that the Minnesota Constitution calls for providing a free public education is because the charge of the public schools is to educate for citizenry, which involves then you got to be able to go out and find work and support yourself and participate in the life of the community. The biggest strength of the district is that I think it has a long history of being regarded as a good school system, and I fear that the situations we find ourselves in threaten that to some degree, which is related to the third point. The thing I would like to change most immediately was we have to do some things with staffing at the high school. So we allow the teachers there to do the sorts of things that they're capable of doing and that they're committed to doing for the kids. I had conversations with a math and an English teacher from the high school last night, and they talked about class sizes. They talked about obstacles to letting them do the work that they want to do and that the kids deserve.
Candidate Hazelton.
I too would concur with a number of my colleagues at this table. The goal of public schools is to educate children. We want to provide them the best education possible so they're successful in life, whether that means entering the workforce after graduation or going on to secondary education, college, and et cetera. Some of our greatest strengths in our district are some of our programs we offer. Our teachers. I've seen a statistic, and don't quote me, but I believe it's like 65% of our teachers have a master's degree or higher. That's impressive. So our assets are our teachers. They're in the front lines every day. What I would like to change, as Mr. Barato said, is our finances, and that begins with more transparency and public trust. Thank you.
Candidate Solomon.
I think the function of the public schools, broadly stated, is the foundation of our nation. They create an educated populace for establishing a democracy. They give us an educated workforce. Winona largely has succeeded at that over the years. It's a diverse community. It's a diverse population in the schools, and that creates a group that is ready for society. We have strong teachers, as said. I would remind that among the things we do so well is music, because this is a music town. We have industries built on music here. And what I'd do is I'd go back to our teachers, not just at the high school, although the high school is important, but particularly in our elementary schools. We are becoming too administrative-centric. We need to go back to being teacher-centric.
Candidate Shul.
So the answer to this is not really a mystery. You can look it up. It's in the State Constitution of Minnesota. That the State Constitution of Minnesota, which was inspired by the works of Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Rush and Horace Mann, says that schools are to secure a Republican form of government. That democratic citizenship is the purpose of our public school system, plain and simple. And what does the democracy require? It requires critical inquiry, it requires problem solving, it requires tolerance, it requires anti-racism. And so it's a habit of mind of what John Dewey called associated living. Ernest Horn from the University of Iowa called it living together well. Our greatest asset, our teachers, period. And what would I like to do to change our district is I would like to empower the teachers in decision making. Thanks.
Our last question, we're starting to run out of time. How could you, as a school board member, help to address educational disparities among students at various levels of education? And for this, we will start with candidate Shul.
So first of all, disparities among race, that was a broad question. I'm assuming we're talking about issues of race. I'm going to go to the route of Mr. Hanratty. I believe we need to deal with early intervention, and I think that, for instance, we need to try to invest more in our ECFE program. And, some of it requires money. We need to ask the state, but some of it doesn't. I think we need to have more play going on. I think that we realize that allows for the improvement of students' development of their cognitive structures and understanding how to learn, about life, their peers, and the idea of loving learning. So I would deal with early intervention to help resolve that problem. It's a deep question. 1 minute's not going to do it, but there you go.
Candidate Schill.
To address the disparities in learning between,
How could you as a school board member help to address educational disparities among students at various levels of education?
I think the best way to do that is to do the work that a board member should be doing and telling administration that we should set policies in ways that are going to direct as many resources as we can toward identifying the kids who are having trouble and putting our resources, financial and human and otherwise, into services that are going to serve those kids who are having trouble. That's easier said than done, because those services have to compete with many other things. But that, I think, is the basic is the basic answer: is identify where the system is failing to work for those kids who aren't succeeding, and directing resources their way to try to help them.
Candidate Sonneman.
I think if we look at improving educational outcomes for all students, we need to look at a couple basic things we can do in this district. One of them is get back to small schools. Identify how we can function, create a functioning small school system, look to what's going on around the country, and do it. Stop fighting small schools, because that connects teachers and students. The second thing we can do in direct effect on this district is move the 5th grade back into the elementary schools. We made a mistake taking it out. It's hurting the performance throughout the middle school. It's why, I submit it's a big reason why the high schools are showing the results they're showing, because they have a poor foundation now. The foundation they leave elementary as it stands is good. It quickly erodes, and we need to get back to addressing that. And the last thing we can do is look at how to use the middle school better. It was built for the house system. We don't use it that way anymore, and we need to look at that.
Candidate Barata.
I think there's a lot of things that we can do to close that gap. Early childhood. They must be ready by 3rd grade. We should have more Title I so that they have some help in reading and math. Interventions, you have to have that early on. We have to grow the people that are having difficulty at a faster rate than the other students, otherwise they'll never catch up. Thank you.
Candidate Portman.
Would you please repeat the question?
How could you as a school board member help to address educational disparities among students at various levels of education?
Thank you. Breaking it down by the various levels. First, it was mentioned, early childhood. If you don't give children a good basic beginning, they're always going to be playing catch-up. They'll always have certain deficiencies to overcome. The other part is you need to assess each child's abilities and where their difficulties lie so that you can help strengthen them, basically as individualized education programs for each child. I guess it's just to treat every child as a unique individual and meet their specific needs as they progress through the school.
Candidate Hanratty.
We need to push for early intervention. The easiest way to do that is through early education, but we specifically have to target those families and children or students who have adverse childhood experiences. We need to empower our teachers, making sure that they have the supports that they need to individualize their teaching. And finally, we need to expand our Title I financing. It's been talked about for years that that's the goal of board member candidates, but it hasn't been happening. So I'd like to push administration to see what we can do for options in that area.
Candidate Denzer.
I think it's really important that we focus on building strong relationships at every level with appropriate interventions that are reviewed and evaluated and made sure that it's what's right for that student and that we take all of our levels of learning into effect. But important to me is that we empower our teachers to do the work that they can do creatively. They know the students and they can really tell us what it is that they need to take care of the disparity in the district.
Candidate Hazelton.
I would concur with many of the statements that have been said by my fellow candidates. ECFE, early childhood intervention programs and screening for preschool can identify problems early in life, and then those kids can be worked with and receive the services that they need. One of the side effects of our school consolidation is now we lost preschool in our elementary schools with the exception of Goodview. And that is not a good thing. I would like to see us bring preschool back to our elementary schools and give these kids the early intervention. And as they progress through their school careers in middle and high school, keep reinforcing that. Develop IEPs with these kids. Help them reach their potential. Give them the resources they need and more funding to go with it.
We're close to the end of our forum, and we'd like to ask each of our candidates now to present their 1-minute closing remark. Our first speaker will be candidate Hazelton.
Yes, I want to thank the audience for their questions, the press for covering, the League of Women Voters and the other sponsors. A lot of great things do happen in our public schools. I want to take it to the next level. This community is divided right now. I'm hearing it as I'm out campaigning because of prior decisions. I want to open up more lines of communication. I want to bring back stuff that was eliminated years ago that was a detriment to our students. I want to be fiscally responsible, bring back transparency and public trust. And also I want to work to bring back these children who we lost and make our district the best that it can be, and to draw more students, which helps the bottom line, and educate all of our kids, and they deserve the best education that we can get. Vote for Ted Hazelton. Thank you.
Candidate Shield.
If I had to give an elevator speech, I'd say education is more important than buildings. Kids who need help should get help, and taxpayers should get a good return on their investment in public education. The main message I would have, though, is I would urge members of the public to inform themselves and to get out there and vote. Take a look at the issues, learn some of the challenges that we face, look at some of the complicated decisions, look at some of all of the complexities that go into accomplishing all of the good things that everybody in the community wants to accomplish, and then ask yourself, what is the best course for pursuing those things? Again, I would just urge you, please, please, please immerse yourself in the issues. Pay attention, talk to people. If you have got questions about facts, try to get the answers so that the decisions that you make are ones that are going to be based on facts and that you can feel good about in the future. Thanks.
Candidate Hanratty.
Thanks again for having me this evening. I believe that I am uniquely qualified as a problem solver based on my employment in the human services field. One thing that wasn't addressed this evening, but is a priority of mine, is school safety. It wasn't addressed as a question, but I want to make sure that our schools are not only safe from gun violence, but I want to make sure that all of our students are safe from all forms of harassment. I believe that that is done by changing the culture of toxic hegemonic masculinity And the way we do that is empower our teachers to intervene at every level by when they hear something, they can take the opportunity to give a little tough kindness to our students to try to change that culture. I'm Michael Hanratty. I'm running in the 2nd District, and I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Candidate Denzer.
Again, I'd like to thank the league, all of you, and others running for school board. I believe I have the qualities that would add value to the school board through my experience in education and my commitment to moving forward. I understand and appreciate moving forward, and healing takes time, but absolutely believe that it can be done. I believe in Winona Area Public Schools, the administration, staff, students, and this community. We have challenges that are present today that we need to work together to address. In my 34 years of experience, there are always challenges because we are an ever-changing society of learners and need to embrace those changes that make us better able to meet the needs of all students. My name is Nancy Denzer, and I would appreciate your vote on November 6th. Thank you.
Candidate Portman.
As a board member, I pledge to work to develop 7 points for the board itself, and these are not in any particular order. One is to develop community trust. Another is to begin to have outreach and engagement with the community. Another is informed decision-making on the part of the board. Another is transparency, that people understand and see how decisions are being made. I believe in accountability. I believe in collaboration, and I believe we need to empower our teachers. I'd like to thank all the candidates here for their commitment to improving the schools and the education of our children. We have 8 capable, competent candidates running for positions for the school board. Please vote on November the 6th. Thank you.
Candidate Solomon.
I can bring 30 years of experience in public finance to this board. I have seen many creative solutions and ideas in the area of how public projects are financed. And I am distressed when I hear the board say our alternatives were few or they didn't exist. There are many alternatives that were simply swept off the table, were never brought to the table, and we can consider far, far more than we have. What I find a wonderful connection, that I think we also have teachers who, if we give them the opportunity, they too have great creative ideas. But we are suppressing that in this district. And we need to stop that. We need to bring an idea that it is the teachers who are our most valuable asset, who can work directly with the students and give them, empower them to be what they can be and make this district what it can be. Thank you.
Candidate Schul.
Minnesota State School Board Association says that a school board's mission is to secure student success. I'm boldly for WAPS teachers because I'm boldly for WAPS students. It is a means to an end. We must realize the importance of our teachers. A school is nothing more than a sophisticated and elaborate babysitting service if it weren't for our teachers. They are the heartbeat of a school because of their close relationship with students and parents. If teachers are empowered more often, schools can be more responsive to those students and parents. The idea of empowering teachers is rooted in theory and research. Imagine what this might look like for WAPS as teachers design curricula, spearhead professional development, and have the opportunity to advance their careers while remaining in the classroom. The best schools in the world already do this. Why can't we break free from the convention and release ourselves from the chains of an elaborate administrative bureaucracy that controls decision-making? Why can't WAPS be among the best schools in the nation? If not us, then who? If not now, then when?
Candidate Barado.
Want to thank the league for putting this together. I've outlined in my opening statement some of the things that I hope that the board accomplishes in the years to come, but I'm going to take a little different direction. Politicians promise many things during a campaign, and many on which they cannot deliver. I'm not a politician, so I will only promise what I think I can deliver. Whatever comes before the board for a vote, I will continue to do what I've always done. If it is good for students, And if it's good for my constituents, I will vote yes. If it isn't good for students and the public, I'll vote no. I can also promise to keep taking phone calls and listening to all concerns, and also talking about concerns and ideas when I meet people in public. I have always tried to be a voice of reason on the board, and I will continue to do so, and I would appreciate your vote November 6th.
We're now at the end of our time for this forum. We want to thank all of our candidates for an informative event. We'd like to thank HBC for taking this educational forum. The forum in its entirety will be made available on the League of Women Voters Winona Facebook page within a few days. Briefly share the dates and times of upcoming League of Women Voters General Candidate Forums. On October 15th from 6:30 to 7:30, we will be in the city of St. Charles for the mayor and 2 at-large council seats. That forum will be held in the St. Charles Community Center. October 18th from 6:30 to 7:30, we'll be back here in City Hall to have a forum with our Winona County officials, the attorney, auditor, treasurer, recorder, and sheriff, with statements from the unopposed supervisors for soil and water. These events will feature televised candidate statements and time for the public present to directly meet the candidates after the televised portion of the evening. Watch your local media publicity for updates on these opportunities. If you need information on becoming a registered voter, call the Winona County Auditor Treasurer or the Winona City Clerk. You may register to vote for the general election online at the Minnesota Secretary of State's office until October 16, 2018 for the general election. Minnesota does have registration at the polls. Check the Secretary of State's website on the process, as several items of identification must be provided on election day to election judges. MNLWV.org is a website you may also use for general voter services information. Please vote. The general election is on Tuesday, November 6th, and the polls are open for